The convergence station hung in space like a jewel, massive and glittering with 1,000 lights. Ships from across the galaxy docked at its ports, each one more impressive than the last. Crystal vessels that caught starlight and bent it into rainbows, living ships that pulsed with bioluminescence, energy constructs that looked like bottled lightning given form. Then came the human ship. The Perseverance looked nothing like the others. Its hull was gray metal, scarred and practical. It moved on chemical thrusters that left faint trails of exhaust. Where other ships hummed with anti-gravity fields, the human vessel simply pushed its way forward with brute force. It was a box with engines ugly and functional. On the observation deck of Convergence Station, Ambassador Thalrex of the Kralith Empire watched the human ship approach. His 4 eyes widened, then narrowed with amusement. The translator implant in his skull picked up his thoughts and broadcast them to the other delegates nearby. "Is that truly their warship?" he asked, his voice carrying the rumbling tone of his species. "It looks like a cargo hauler." Ambassador Vexel of the Vexari Consensus studied the approaching vessel with her compound eyes. Her silver skin rippled with what might have been laughter. "My sensors indicate it uses combustion drives." "Combustion!" "My ancestors abandoned such technology 5,000 years ago. Perhaps they are showing us their museum pieces," suggested Elder Zephron, his ancient form hovering in a containment field. Surely no species would bring such a primitive craft to a diplomatic function. Inside the Perseverance, Commander Sarah Chen stood on the bridge, her hands clasped behind her back. She was a woman in her 40s with short black hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. Around her, the crew worked at their stations with quiet efficiency. "Ma'am, we're picking up quite a bit of chatter on the diplomatic channels," said Lieutenant Park from the communication station. "They're talking about us." "I can imagine," Chen said. Her voice was calm, but there was steel underneath. "What's the general tone?" "Mockery, mostly. Some confusion. One of the Kralith representatives just called us adorably primitive." Chen's jaw tightened slightly, but her expression remained neutral. "Noted. Continue monitoring." "And Park?" "Yes, ma'am." "Make sure every word is recorded and translated. I want Ambassador Williams to have a complete record of this warm welcome." The Perseverance docked at the assigned port without incident. The airlock cycled and Ambassador Daniel Williams stepped onto Convergence Station, flanked by 2 human Marines in dress uniforms. Williams was a tall man with gray hair and a diplomat's practiced smile, but his eyes were cold as he took in the assembled delegates. The reception hall was enormous, designed to accommodate species of all sizes and atmospheric requirements. Force fields separated different environmental zones. The assembled aliens numbered in the hundreds, representing 47 different civilizations. "Welcome, humans," said Elder Zephron, floating forward. His voice was thin with age but carried authority. "We are pleased that you have joined us for this historic occasion. Today, humanity petitions for membership in the Galactic Collective." "Thank you, Elder," Williams said, bowing slightly. "We are honored to be here. Though we must admit surprise at your choice of vessel," Ambassador Thalrex said, stepping forward. He towered over Williams, his armored carapace gleaming. "The Perseverance is quite rustic. Does humanity lack the technology for proper shielding? We noticed your ship has none." "We have different design philosophies," Williams said smoothly. "Our ships are built to our specifications." Of course," Thalrex said, his voice dripping with false sympathy. "Please do not feel embarrassed. Many younger species struggle with advanced technology. The Kralith Empire would be happy to share our knowledge. For a price, naturally." Ambassador Vexel glided closer, her movements insectile and precise. "I have analyzed your ship's power output. You use fission reactors, yes? How quaint. The Vexari abandoned such dangerous technology millennia ago. Zero-point energy is much more efficient and safer." "We appreciate your concern," Williams said, his smile never wavering. "However, our reactors serve our needs adequately." "But do they serve you safely?" asked another delegate, a crystalline being whose name Williams couldn't immediately recall. "We detected radiation shielding throughout your vessel." "Your own ship is dangerous to its crew," murmurs rippled through the assembled aliens. Williams could feel the judgment, the condescension. They looked at humanity the way wealthy nobles might look at a peasant who had stumbled into their party, wearing muddy boots. "Your weapon systems are equally concerning," Thalrex continued, warming to his subject. "Kinetic projectiles? Mass drivers? These are museum pieces," Even our oldest defensive shields can deflect such primitive attacks. Did you truly bring a warship armed with what amounts to throwing rocks very fast? Laughter echoed through the hall. It wasn't cruel exactly. It was the laughter of those who found something unexpectedly amusing, like watching a child play at being a soldier. Williams's smile finally faded. Ambassador Thalrex, I would remind you that humanity has survived and thrived for thousands of years with these primitive technologies. They have served us well. Survived against whom? Thalrex asked, spreading his forearms wide. Yourselves? We know your history, Ambassador Williams. Humanity spent most of its existence fighting itself. Civil wars, world wars, endless conflicts over resources and ideology. You only reached the stars recently and you brought your violent nature with you. Every species has a difficult past, Williams began. Not like yours, Vexil interjected. Most species achieve peace before they achieve spaceflight. You achieved spaceflight, then immediately militarized it. Your orbital space is cluttered with weapon platforms. Your moon has military installations. Even this ship coming to a diplomatic function is a warship rather than a diplomatic vessel. What does that say about humanity? Williams opened his mouth to respond, but Thalrex continued. It says you do not understand the galaxy you have entered. We have been at peace for over 1,000 standard years. The collective maintains order through cooperation and mutual benefit. War is a relic of primitive times. Species that cannot move beyond such base instincts have no place among us. The ambassador's hand moved slightly, touching the communication device on his wrist. On the Perseverance, Commander Chen received the signal. Her crew looked up from their stations, waiting for orders. Chen watched the diplomatic feed on her screen, seeing the contempt on the alien faces. She had seen that look before, in her years of military service. It was the look of someone who thought they were superior, who had never truly been tested. Steady, she told her crew quietly. Let's see how this plays out. The formal council session began 2 hours after the reception. The chamber was circular, with floating platforms arranged in tiers that rose toward a domed ceiling showing the stars beyond. Each delegation had its own platform, adjusted for their specific needs. The humans stood on a simple metal platform near the bottom tier, a position that made the hierarchy clear. Elder Zephron's voice echoed through the chamber. We gather to hear humanity's petition for membership in the Galactic Collective. Ambassador Williams, you may present your case. Williams stepped forward, his posture straight and confident despite the poor positioning. Honored delegates, humanity comes before you today seeking not charity but partnership. We offer our ingenuity, our determination, and our unique perspective gained from our difficult history. We have overcome great challenges on our homeworld. We have learned to work together despite our differences. We have developed technologies suited to our needs and our environment. We have much to learn from you, but we also believe we have much to offer. He continued for 15 minutes outlining humanity's achievements, their scientific contributions, their cultural richness. He spoke of their exploration of their own solar system, their development of sustainable colonies, their advances in medicine and agriculture. When he finished, silence filled the chamber. Then Thalrex stood on his platform, his massive form casting shadows across the lower tiers. A pretty speech, he said, but words are not enough. The collective requires proof of capability. We must ensure that new members can contribute to our mutual defense and maintain the standards we have established over millennia. We understand, Williams said. Our technical specifications and capability assessments have been submitted for review. Yes, we have reviewed them, Vexil said, her voice like wind through crystal. They are concerning. Your ships lack proper shielding. Your weapons are outdated. Your fastest vessel would take weeks to cross distances our ships cover in days. These are not the capabilities of a species ready for the collective. Another delegate, a being of pure energy contained in a magnetic field, spoke up. Perhaps humanity would be better served under a protectorate arrangement. The Vexari or Kralith could provide protection while humanity develops more appropriate technology. Humanity does not seek protection, Williams said firmly. We seek membership as equals. Thalrex's laugh boomed through the chamber. Equals, Ambassador, please. Your ship out there is a relic. I could destroy it with a single destroyer from our fleet. How can you speak of equality when you cannot even defend yourselves? We have defended ourselves quite successfully throughout our history, Williams replied, his voice taking on an edge. Against yourselves, yes, Thalrex said dismissively. But you have never faced a true military power. Your entire planet's combined fleet would not challenge even a minor Kralith battle group. Those are bold claims, William said. Are they? Then prove me wrong. Thalrex gestured toward the view screen showing the docked ships. Let us have a demonstration. A simple combat trial. Your perseverance against one of our destroyers. Non-lethal engagement, of course. Just enough to demonstrate that you can function at our level. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Some delegates looked uncomfortable with the suggestion, but many more nodded in agreement. Elder Zephyron raised a hand. That is highly irregular, Ambassador Thalrex, is it? We have required capability demonstrations before. The Ixtar demonstrated their medical technology. The Prendex showed their terraforming abilities. Why should military capability be different, especially when humanity comes before us in a warship? This feels more like a challenge than a test, William said carefully. Call it what you wish, Thalrex said. But if humanity cannot demonstrate basic defensive and offensive capabilities, how can we trust them to uphold their responsibilities as collective members? What happens when a crisis occurs and we must depend on human ships to maintain order? Williams touched his wrist communicator. I need a moment to consult with my military commander. Of course, Thalrex said, his tone magnanimous. Take all the time you need. On the Perseverance, Commander Chen had been watching the entire exchange. She wasn't surprised when Williams's private channel request came through. Commander, I need your assessment, Williams said quietly. Can we take on a Kralith destroyer? In a real fight? Absolutely, Chen said without hesitation. But sir, I'm not sure that's what you're asking. You want to know if we can do it without starting an interstellar incident. Exactly. If we refuse, we lose face and probably our bid for membership. If we accept and win decisively, we might be seen as aggressive. If we lose, we won't lose, sir, Chen said. But I understand the problem. You need me to be impressive without being threatening. Can you do that? Chen was quiet for a moment, thinking. Her crew watched her, waiting. Finally, she smiled, but it wasn't a pleasant expression. Sir, I can do something better. I can teach them a lesson they'll never forget. But I'll need you to trust me. Williams hesitated. He had worked with military commanders before, and he knew that tone. It was the tone of someone who had a plan that was probably brilliant and definitely risky. What do you have in mind? He asked. I'd rather not say over an open channel, even an encrypted one, Chen said. But I promise you this, no one will die. No ships will be destroyed. And by the time I'm done, every delegate in that chamber will understand exactly what humanity brings to the table. Williams looked at the screen showing Thalrex's smug face, then back at his own reflection in the monitor. He thought about all the condescension, all the mockery, all the dismissive laughter. He thought about the choice, back down and prove them right about humanity being weak or fight and risk everything. Do it, he said. But Commander, yes, sir? Remember, we came here for peace. Whatever you do, keep that in mind. Always, sir, Chen said. Always. Williams closed the channel and turned back to face the council. Thalrex was speaking with other delegates, his body language confident and relaxed. He clearly expected the humans to refuse or to accept and be humiliated. Ambassador Thalrex, Williams said, his voice carrying across the chamber. Humanity accepts your challenge. The chamber erupted in surprised murmurs. Thalrex turned, his four eyes widening slightly. He had expected hesitation, maybe even refusal. Acceptance was unexpected. Excellent, he said, recovering quickly. We shall make arrangements for the engagement. Non-lethal weapons only, of course. First ship disabled loses. Agreed? Agreed, Williams said. Though I feel I should warn you. Warn me? Thalrex laughed. Of what? That your primitive weapons might scratch my paint. Williams smiled thinly. No. I was going to warn you that Commander Chen takes great pride in her work. She doesn't like to lose. Neither do I, Ambassador, Thalrex said. Neither do I. Outside, in the darkness of space, the Kralith destroyer began to move away from the station, taking up position for the engagement. The Perseverance's engines flared to life, and the ugly metal ship followed, moving with surprising grace despite its appearance. On both bridges, commanders checked their systems, gave orders, and prepared for combat. But only one of them was smiling. Commander Sarah Chen stood at the center of the Perseverance's bridge, her hands resting on the tactical display table. Around her, her crew worked with quiet efficiency, their faces calm and focused. They had trained for this moment, though not in the way anyone might expect. Lieutenant Park, open a channel. Wide spectrum broadcast. I want every ship within sensor range to hear this, including the station. Yes, ma'am. Channel open. Chen took a breath, then began to speak. Her voice was level, almost conversational, but it carried a weight that made everyone who heard it pay attention. This is Commander Sarah Chen of the Human Confederation warship Perseverance. I am broadcasting on all frequencies to ensure there are no misunderstandings about what happens next. On the Kralith destroyer, Commander Thalvek checked his weapon status. All systems showed green. His shields were at maximum power. His crew was ready. He listened to the human's transmission with mild curiosity, expecting perhaps a formal declaration or maybe even a surrender. What he got was something else entirely. We came here in peace, Chen continued. We came to talk, to learn, to offer our friendship to the species of this galaxy. That was our intention. That remains our intention. But we have been mocked since the moment we arrived. Our technology has been called primitive. Our capabilities have been questioned. Our very right to be here has been challenged. Chen's voice never rose, never showed anger. It stayed calm, almost gentle. Somehow that made it more frightening. So let me be very clear about what you are seeing when you look at the Perseverance. You see old technology. You see crude designs. You see what you think is weakness. You are wrong. On the observation deck of Convergence Station, the assembled delegates watched the two ships facing each other. Some looked excited, anticipating entertainment. Others looked concerned. Ambassador Williams stood very still, watching his ship and wondering what Chen was about to do. Your ships are beautiful, Chen said. They really are. Elegant curves, sophisticated shields, weapons that convert energy with perfect efficiency. They were designed by species who have known peace for thousands of years. They were built by civilizations that had forgotten what real war looks like. Lieutenant Park glanced at his commander. She caught his eye and nodded slightly. He pressed a button, and data began flowing from the Perseverance to every ship in range. Our ship is not beautiful. It was not designed by people who had forgotten war. It was designed by people who remembered every single lesson learned from 10,000 years of killing each other. Every system has redundancies. Every weapon has been tested in combat, not simulation. Every member of my crew is trained for scenarios you haven't considered since your species' history books were written. The data that flooded alien sensors was simple but devastating. It showed targeting solutions. Every ship within range had been tracked since the moment the Perseverance arrived. Every weak point had been identified. Shield generators, power cores, command centers, weapon systems. The human ship had cataloged them all with disturbing precision. You laugh at our kinetic weapons, Chen said. You call them primitive. Do you know why we use them? Because they work. Your shields are designed to disperse energy. They're very good at it. But they were never designed to stop solid matter moving at significant fractions of light speed. A tungsten rod doesn't care about your energy field. It doesn't slow down. It doesn't disperse. It just passes through. On the Kralith destroyer, Thalvek's tactical officer spoke urgently. Commander, they have firing solutions on us. Multiple solutions. They're tracking our power core, our shield generators, even our individual weapon ports. That's impossible, Thalvek said. Our shields should prevent such detailed scans. They're not scanning through our shields, sir. They're using passive sensors, watching our energy signatures, analyzing our maneuvering patterns. They've been building a model of our ship's internal layout based on observable data. You see 3 backup systems as redundancy, Chen continued. We see them as bare minimum. You see armor as weight to be minimized. We see it as the difference between going home and dying in space. You design ships to avoid damage. We design ships to survive it. Chen walked around the tactical table, her fingers tracing across displays. My crew doesn't train for ideal conditions. They train for disaster. They practice fighting with half our systems down, with hull breaches, with fires and failing life support. They know how to keep fighting when everything has gone wrong, because for most of human history, that was the only kind of fighting we did. Ambassador Vexel watched the data scrolling across her screens, her compound eyes processing information faster than most species could manage. What she saw disturbed her. The human ship had identified vulnerabilities in the Kralith destroyer that even the Kralith themselves probably didn't know existed. Weak points in the shield geometry, timing patterns in the power distribution, blind spots in the sensor coverage. You asked for a demonstration, Chen said. You wanted to see if humanity could function at your level. But you need to understand something first. We don't fight at your level. We fight at our level. And our level was forged in the kind of warfare you forgot was possible. Her voice remained calm, but now there was something underneath it. Not anger. Not aggression. Something colder. Something patient. I don't want to fight you. I really don't. Because if I do, even with non-lethal weapons, I'm going to show you things you don't want to see. I'm going to demonstrate capabilities that will make you reconsider every assumption you've made about warfare. And I'm going to do it in a way that makes it very clear that the only reason the Kralith destroyer returns to dock intact is because I allow it. Silence filled the communication channels. On Convergence Station, no one laughed now. They watched the two ships, and many of them were running the same calculations their computers were running. The human ship was smaller. It was slower. It looked weaker in every measurable way, but the targeting data didn't lie. The Perseverance had been quietly preparing to fight every ship in the system from the moment it arrived. Not aggressively, not threateningly, just prepared, always prepared. You want to know what makes humanity dangerous? Chen asked. It's not our weapons. It's not our ships. It's that we never ever stop thinking about how to survive. Every human child learns about war. We teach them about the mistakes we made, the prices we paid, the lessons we learned. We remember our history because forgetting would dishonor everyone who died teaching us those lessons. She paused, letting her words sink in. So here's what's going to happen. Commander Thalvik is going to power down his weapons. He's going to return to the station. And we're going to go back to the council chamber and finish our diplomatic presentation, because that's what we came here to do, and if we refuse... Thalvik's voice came over the channel tight with suppressed anger. Chen's response was quiet. Then I will demonstrate exactly what 10,000 years of refined warfare looks like when applied by people who also learned mercy. You'll survive. Your crew will survive. Your ship will be recoverable. But you'll spend the rest of your life knowing that the only reason you survived is because humanity chose peace. The silence that followed was absolute. In the council chamber, Elder Zephyron floated motionless, his ancient eyes wide. He had lived for over 800 standard years. He had seen the rise and fall of civilizations. And in that moment, listening to the human commander's calm voice, he understood something that terrified him. Humanity hadn't forgotten war. They had perfected it, and then somehow they had chosen to pursue peace instead. That made them more dangerous than any species in the galaxy. For 10 seconds, nothing happened. The two ships hung in space, facing each other like ancient warriors waiting for the first move. On Convergence Station, hundreds of aliens watched their screens, holding their breath in whatever way their species managed such things. Then Commander Thalvik made his choice. Humanity thinks it can threaten the Kralith Empire. His voice crackled over the open channel, loud and defiant. We have conquered 100 worlds. We have fought wars that lasted centuries. We will not be intimidated by primitives who just learned to leave their own planet. His weapons charged, targeting systems locking onto the Perseverance. Energy readings spiked across every sensor in range. Fire! Brilliant lances of concentrated energy leaped across the void, aimed with precision at the human ship's reactor core, its engine assemblies, its command deck. The Kralith destroyer's weapons could cut through asteroids, boil away small moons, turn enemy vessels into expanding clouds of plasma. On the Perseverance, Commander Chen didn't even blink. Point defense, she said calmly. Execute pattern Delta 7. The human ship seemed to explode outward, but it wasn't an explosion. Dozens of small projectiles launched from hidden ports, spreading across the space between the two vessels. They weren't weapons. They were chaff, ablative particles, tiny sacrificial barriers designed for exactly this purpose. The Kralith energy beams hit the chaff cloud and scattered. Some energy got through, but it was diffused, weakened, spread across the Perseverance's armored hull instead of concentrated on vital systems. Radiation detectors screamed warnings, but the hull held. Backup systems activated automatically, rerouting power, compensating for minor damage. Hull breach on Deck 7, Section 3, Lieutenant Park reported. Automatically sealed. No casualties, acknowledged, Chen said. She hadn't moved from her position at the tactical table. Helm hold position. Weapons prepare Railgun 1. Single shot. Target their primary weapon array. Firing solution Echo 3. Ma'am, that's a precision shot at extreme range, the weapons officer said. I know what it is, Lieutenant. Can you make it? The weapons officer smiled. Yes, ma'am. Then fire when ready. The Perseverance's railgun didn't look impressive from the outside. It was a long barrel extending from the ship's spine, scarred and worn from use. No glowing energy, no dramatic charge-up sequence. Just a simple electromagnetic accelerator that had been refined over centuries of use. The tungsten rod was small, barely larger than a human fist. But it left the railgun at 4% of light speed. The Kralith shields never registered it. Energy shields are designed to deflect and absorb energy. They're brilliant at it, capable of withstanding sustained fire from multiple ships. But the shields weren't designed for solid projectiles moving at relativistic speeds. The physics are different. The energy calculations don't apply in the same way. The rod passed through the shield like it wasn't there. It hit the Kralith destroyer's primary weapon array with precisely calculated force, not enough to penetrate the hull, but more than enough to sever connections, shatter delicate components, and fuse the entire system into uselessness. Thalvek's ship shuddered. Alarms blared. His weapons officer stared at his console in disbelief. Primary weapons offline. The humans, they shot through our shields. Secondary weapons fire. Thalvek roared. Chen watched the destroyer maneuver, bringing its backup systems to bear. Missile pods deploy package Alpha. Detonate at 3 kilometers. Yes, ma'am. The Perseverance launched a spread of missiles. They were bulky, unsophisticated-looking things compared to the sleek, guided weapons other species used. The Kralith destroyer's defensive systems tracked them easily, preparing to shoot them down. The missiles never got close enough. At exactly 3 kilometers, they detonated. But these weren't simple explosives. They were nuclear-pumped X-ray lasers, a technology most species had abandoned as too crude, too wasteful, too dangerous. For exactly 1 second, each missile became a star. The nuclear detonation pumped energy through crystalline rods, converting explosive force into coherent X-ray beams that scattered in all directions. The Kralith destroyer's shields flared brilliant white, overloading, struggling to dissipate energy that was coming from multiple directions simultaneously. The shields held, but barely. And in that moment of overload and recovery, the destroyer was effectively blind. Its sensors couldn't penetrate the radiation wash. Its shields were fully engaged, just staying intact. Chen tapped her tactical display. ECM suite active. Full spectrum. Duration, 0.7 seconds. 0.7 seconds? Park asked. Ma'am, that's barely... 0.7 seconds, Chen repeated. Execute. The Perseverance's electronic countermeasures activated for less than a second. Every sensor on Convergence Station went dark. Every ship in range lost tracking. The entire local space became a void of static and interference. Then just as suddenly everything came back online. The sensors cleared. Ships reacquired their targets. But in that fraction of a second, the Perseverance had moved. Not far, just enough. Its weapons had repositioned. Its targeting solutions had updated, and everyone watching understood the message. The humans could have done anything in that moment of blindness. They could have fired. They could have maneuvered. They could have targeted any ship in range, including the station itself. But they had done nothing except demonstrate that they could. Commander Thalvek. Chen's voice came across the channel, still calm, still measured. Your primary weapons are offline. Your shields are recovering from overload. Your sensors were blind for 0.7 seconds, which in combat terms is an eternity. I have 3 more railguns ready to fire. I have 16 more missile pods. And I haven't even started using the really creative options. She paused, letting that sink in. You can keep fighting if you want, but let me be very clear about what will happen. I will disable your secondary weapons. I will knock out your shield generators one by one. I will take apart your ship piece by piece, and I will do it without killing a single member of your crew. Because that's what my people learn to do. We learn to be precise. We learn to be efficient. And we learn to show mercy even when we're winning. Thalvek stared at his screens, at the damage reports, at the tactical analysis his computers were running. Every simulation came back with the same result: defeat. Certain, total defeat. How? He whispered. How is this possible? Because you forgot, Chen said gently. You forgot what war really means. You forgot that shields can fail, that weapons can miss, that battles are won by whoever can keep fighting after everything goes wrong. We never forgot. We couldn't afford to. She entered a command on her console. I'm transmitting your emergency override codes to you now. Your power core is running hot, probably from the shield overload. You'll want to route auxiliary power to your cooling systems before it becomes critical. The procedure is in the data packet I'm sending. You're helping us? Thalvek's confusion was evident in his voice. Of course I am, Chen said. You're not my enemy, Commander. You're just someone who made a mistake. We all make mistakes. The trick is surviving long enough to learn from them. On Convergence Station, the assembled delegates watched as the human ship transmitted technical data to the crippled Kralith destroyer. They watched as the destroyer's power system stabilized, as emergency procedures activated, as what could have been a disaster became merely an embarrassing defeat. Ambassador Vexil's silver skin had turned a pale gray, a sign of shock in her species. They disabled a military destroyer in under 2 minutes, and then they saved it. Elder Zephyron was very quiet, his ancient mind processing what he had witnessed. When he finally spoke, his voice was heavy with understanding. They didn't come here to demonstrate their weapons, he said softly. They came to demonstrate their restraint. They wanted us to understand that they could destroy us, but chose not to. That's not the action of primitives. That's the action of a species that has learned wisdom from their violence. On the Perseverance, Commander Chen allowed herself a small smile. All stations stand down to ready status. Lieutenant Park, open a channel to Ambassador Williams. Channel open, ma'am. Ambassador, the demonstration is complete. The Kralith destroyer is disabled but intact. No casualties on either side. I believe we've made our point. Permission to return to dock? Ambassador Williams, watching from the council chamber with a mixture of relief and pride, nodded. Permission granted, Commander. Well done. Just doing my job, sir, Chen said. Just doing my job. The council chamber was silent as Ambassador Williams stood to address the assembled delegates. The massive room, which had been filled with laughter and condescension hours before, now felt like a tomb. Hundreds of eyes, compound and simple, natural and artificial, watched the human with expressions that ranged from shock to fear to dawning respect. Elder Zephyron floated at the center of the chamber, his ancient form somehow seeming smaller than before. When he spoke, his voice carried none of its earlier authority. It sounded tired, almost sad. The council must discuss what we have witnessed. Ambassador Williams, if you would excuse us for a time. Of course, Elder, Williams said, bowing slightly. He left the chamber with his escorts, leaving the delegates to their deliberations. The moment the doors sealed, the chamber erupted into chaos. Voices in dozens of languages, filtered through translators, overlapped in a cacophony of fear and confusion. They shot through shields. The targeting precision was impossible. Did you see the sensor blackout? They could have destroyed anything. Those weapons, those were nuclear devices. They detonated nuclear weapons in a demonstration. Ambassador Thalrek stood very still on his platform, his forearms hanging limply at his sides. He had watched his finest destroyer, commanded by one of his best officers, dismantled in less than 2 minutes. His pride, his certainty, his entire worldview had been shattered as thoroughly as the Kralith weapon systems. I reviewed the combat data 3 times, said a delegate from the Yixtar Confederation, his crystalline body flickering with agitated light. The human ship tracked every vessel in range from the moment of arrival. They had firing solutions prepared for all of us. Not just the Kralith destroyer, all of us. They were ready to fight the entire station, Vexil said quietly. Her silver skin had returned to its normal color, but her voice shook slightly. From the moment they arrived, they were prepared for the possibility that everyone here might turn hostile. They expected betrayal. Can you blame them? Asked another delegate, a mammalian being from the outer reaches. We mocked them. We questioned their worth. We challenged them to combat. And still, they showed restraint. They disabled rather than destroyed. They helped repair what they had damaged. Elder Zephyron raised a hand, and gradually the chaos subsided. His 800 years of life had taught him patience, and his voice, when he spoke, commanded attention through sheer weight of experience. What we witnessed today was not a demonstration of violence, he said slowly. It was a demonstration of control. The humans could have destroyed the Kralith destroyer. They could have killed everyone aboard. They chose not to. That choice, my friends, is what we must consider. They're too dangerous, Thalrek said suddenly, his voice harsh with emotion. You saw what they did. Their technology bypasses our defenses. Their tactics are designed for total war. How can we trust them? How can we not? Countered Vexil. They had us at their mercy, and they chose mercy. What more evidence of trustworthiness could we ask for? The debate raged for hours. Technical experts presented analysis of the human weapons, the targeting solutions, the tactical doctrine. Military advisors explained the implications of kinetic weapons that could pierce energy shields, of ECM systems that could blind entire fleets, of crews trained to fight through damage that would cripple any other ship. But it was Elder Zephron who finally brought perspective to the discussion. He had been silent for a long time, floating in his containment field, his ancient mind sifting through memories of other species, other conflicts, other first contacts that had gone well or badly. "I have studied humanity's history," he said at last. "Most of you have not because you assumed they were not worth studying. But I am old, and I have learned to never dismiss anyone without understanding them first." He projected images into the center of the chamber, pictures of Earth, of human cities, of monuments and memorials. Humanity is unique in this galaxy. They are perhaps unique in the universe. "Do you know why?" Silence greeted his question. "Because they developed faster than light travel before they developed global peace. Every other species in the collective achieved harmony first, then reached for the stars. Humanity reached for the stars while still at war with themselves. They brought their conflicts into space. They built weapons into their very first orbital stations. They militarized their moon before they had even set foot on it. That proves they're dangerous," Thalaric said. "No," Zephron replied. "It proves they're survivors. They came from a world that was harsh and unforgiving. They evolved as persistence hunters, creatures that tracked their prey for days until it collapsed from exhaustion. They developed tools not because they were strong, but because they were weak. They formed complex social groups not because they were naturally cooperative, but because cooperation was the only way to survive." He paused, letting the images shift to show human history. Wars, conflicts, weapons of terrible power, but also art, music, literature, acts of kindness and sacrifice, scientific achievements and cultural beauty. For 10,000 years they fought each other. They developed weapons that could destroy their entire planet multiple times over. They came close to extinction more than once. And somehow they survived. They learned. They didn't forget their violent nature, but they built something better on top of it. They chose peace not from weakness, but from understanding exactly what war costs. The images shifted again, showing the perseverance, the scarred hull, the functional design, the weapons that looked primitive but proved devastatingly effective. When they finally reached the stars, they didn't come as conquerors. They came cautiously, carefully bringing their weapons because their history taught them to always be prepared, but extending their hand in peace because their history also taught them the value of cooperation. Zephron's voice grew stronger. "They are the only species in this galaxy that knows war intimately and chose peace anyway. Not because they couldn't fight, not because they lacked the power to conquer, but because they understood, truly understood, the price of violence." He looked around the chamber at the assembled delegates. "That makes them the most valuable ally we could ever have, because they will defend peace not as an ideal, but as a hard-won achievement. They know what we risk losing because they've lost it before." The chamber was quiet as his words sank in. Finally, Ambassador Vexil spoke. "You're saying we should accept them?" "I'm saying we should beg them to join us," Zephron replied. "Because sooner or later the peace we've enjoyed for 1,000 years will be threatened. And when that day comes, I would rather have humanity standing beside us than facing us." The vote, when it came, was unanimous, not because everyone agreed with Zephron's assessment, but because no one wanted to make humanity an enemy. Fear played a role, yes, but so did respect and a growing understanding of what humanity represented. Ambassador Williams returned to the chamber with Commander Chen at his side. The human commander looked uncomfortable in the formal setting, more at home on her bridge than in diplomatic councils, but she stood straight and proud in her uniform. "Humanity's petition for membership is accepted," Zephron announced. "Furthermore, the Council wishes to make a request. We would like humanity to share its defensive doctrines, its damage control procedures, and its tactical training. We have been at peace so long that we have forgotten how to survive war. You remember. We need to learn from you." Williams exchanged a glance with Chen. This wasn't what they had expected. They had come prepared to fight for recognition, not to be asked to teach. "We accept," Williams said carefully. "But understand, we don't want to militarize the galaxy. We came seeking peace, not conflict." "We know," Zephron said. And that's precisely why we want to learn from you. Because you know the difference between being prepared for war and seeking war. You know how to be strong without being aggressive. You know how to show mercy without showing weakness. Chen stepped forward slightly. If I may speak, Elder. Please, Commander. There's something I want all of you to understand. The Perseverance isn't our most advanced ship. It's not our strongest, our fastest, or our most powerful. It's a diplomatic escort, designed to be impressive enough to be taken seriously but not so threatening as to cause alarm. We brought it because we were trying to be considerate of your concerns. The implications of her words rippled through the chamber like a stone dropped in still water. If this was their diplomatic ship, what did their actual warships look like? Chen continued, her voice gentle but firm. We have ships designed for combat that would make the Perseverance look like a toy. We have weapons we didn't bring because we didn't want to frighten anyone. We have tactical doctrines that assume fighting against overwhelming odds. But we also have rules of engagement that prioritize protecting civilian life, even enemy civilian life. We have medical ships that will treat anyone who needs help, regardless of whose side they're on. We have traditions of honor and mercy that date back thousands of years. She looked around the chamber, meeting eyes with as many delegates as she could. You asked what humanity brings to the collective. We bring the memory of war and the desire for peace. We bring the knowledge of how to fight and the wisdom to avoid it. We bring strength and restraint in equal measure. We don't want to be your soldiers. We want to be your friends. But if you ever need soldiers, if the peace you've built is ever threatened, we'll stand beside you. Because we know what you'll lose if we don't. The chamber was silent when she finished. Then slowly delegates began to stand. Those whose physiology allowed it. Others raised appendages in whatever gesture their species used for respect. It wasn't applause. It was something more profound. It was recognition. Humanity had arrived at Convergence Station as supplicants begging for acceptance. They left as equals, respected not despite their violent history but because of what they had made of it. On the Perseverance, as the ship prepared to depart, Commander Chen stood on her bridge and watched the other vessels. Many of them were repositioning to form an honor guard, a traditional escort for new collective members. It went better than I expected, Lieutenant Park said quietly. Chen smiled. We came to make friends, Park. And sometimes the best way to make friends is to make sure everyone understands that you'd rather be friends than enemies. Was that wise? Showing them so much? Probably not, Chen admitted. But it was honest. And in the long run, honesty builds better relationships than deception. As the Perseverance moved away from Convergence Station, surrounded by ships that had mocked it hours before and now honored it, Chen thought about the future. Humanity had taken its first real step into the galactic community. There would be challenges ahead, misunderstandings, conflicts of culture and interest, but they would face them together now. Not as primitives and patrons, but as equals. And if the day ever came when the galaxy's long peace ended, humanity would be there, remembering for everyone what war meant and why peace was worth any price to preserve. The stars stretched out before them, and humanity sailed into their future with weapons ready and hands extended in friendship, prepared for both and hoping for only one.